I'm Vic Sorrell with the Vanderbilt HIV Vaccine Program, and it's my honor to serve as one of the co-hosts of today's dialogue. World AIDS Day. Are we still in the dark? Even after all the strides that have been made with regards to care and treatment for those living with HIV, are there still aspects of the epidemic in which we as a global society, as a country, even as a community, are still in the dark? We're very fortunate this afternoon to have a guest, Bruce Johnson Jr., who has been courageous enough to share his journey with us, from becoming diagnosed with HIV to moving through the process into thriving as an HIV-positive man in today's society. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce you now to my friend, Bruce Johnson Jr.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. This means a great deal to me. I want to thank Vic and I want to thank Barbara very much from the bottom of my heart for asking me to do this. It's not very difficult because it's really an honor to stand before you and to just basically tell my story because I'm learning as time goes on that you never know what your story will do for somebody else. And so I'm going to begin with this little song. It's a little verse of a little song that I love, and it kind of just gets me together when I'm not. So there's healing for your sorrow, and there's healing for your pain, and there's healing for your spirit. There is shelter from the rain. Lord, send your healing, for this we know there is a balm in Gilead, oh, for there's a balm, oh, in Gilead to heal the soul. And that's just a little song that, inspires me to give me strength and to let me know that regardless of what I'm dealing with in that moment, whatever pain I'm dealing with, it won't last forever. It's a moment. And so I guess I can just jump right into the way I guess my story began. In 2009, I fell in love, honey, and I mean sure enough. And so I fell in love, and we were just happy. And I just thought that I had met the perfect guy and that everything was going to be all right from here on out. I had an apartment in Virginia. I was actually a student at Hampton University in Virginia, and just grown. Just felt like the first time in my life I'm doing it. And so everything was great. And then I decided to move back here to Nashville, and my boyfriend moved with me, and everything was going all right. And then you can tell when you're in a relationship and things aren't necessarily going the way you expect them to. Well, that was going on. We worked together where I met one of my besties, Amy, and we broke up. And one day I got a message saying, I think it's best, because we live together. He said, I think it's best that I move out. And I said, well, okay, because, you can't force people to do anything. And so he did, and I had begun the process of moving on. Now, I thought of, the heartbreaking idea of being cheated on. I was like, well, maybe that's what has happened. Maybe he's found somebody else. But regardless of what it is, he's gone. So we got to pick up the pieces and move on. That I was completely prepared for. I was completely ready for that. And because I wasn't the first one that's had a breakup, I'm not the first person that's, had their heart broken. So I said, let's go. Me and the Lord, we can work this thing out. Well, at the time, I was the GSA vice president at TSU. GSA is the Gay Straight Alliance. And I was vice president that year, or that semester, and we had an HIV drive in December 1st. And that evening, we had a big group of students that came, and I was so excited because I didn't think that many people were going to come out. And so we had the test done. I took my test, and actually Chris Goodwin, I don't know if you all know Chris Goodwin, he did my test. And I remember when we were standing in the room, I was like, where's my test? What? Why haven't you come back with my test yet? And I remember he looked at me kind of funny, and I was like, uh-oh, well, maybe not, surely not. Surely not. You know, I'm vice president, I'm a leader in the organization, so I'm not going to go first. You know, they're going to do everybody else, and then they'll give us our test. That was my thought. Well, when Chris came to get me, we started up the stairs. I don't know if you all are familiar with the campus at TSU, but we were in the humanities building, which is where I take all of my classes, where I took all of my classes. Well, we were heading upstairs, and I knew on the second floor was where he was handing out results. Well, we went right on past the second floor, and that's when I was like, I don't think this is a good thing. I'm not sure this is going to end well. So we went upstairs, and there was a desk right outside of one of the classrooms, and we sat down, and Chris just straight up told me, he said, we got your test back, and it came back positive. Well, right in that moment, it was more of a cold sweat and that jolt. You know when your stomach drops? Well, you know, I'm classy, so, you know, we can't show how we're feeling. So I just took a breath, and everything inside of me crushed. I kept my face together, but I was stunned. And Chris could tell that I was stunned because I was just sitting there. And so he grabbed my arm, and he said, are you okay? And I said, I am. I said, but now everything makes sense now. Those are my words. I said, everything makes sense now. Because the way that my boyfriend and I broke up, I just thought it was as close as we were, how things were, how much I loved him. The way we broke up, I was like, this makes good sense. Because I just couldn't understand. You know, I had no indication. I never had a rash. I never had a sick day, you know. And so I knew where it came from, which not everyone is blessed to have that reality. But it didn't help because it was someone that I knew and that I loved. And so the journey began down the stairs. And I tell people all the time, when I took those steps down the stairs, that was my journey. That was the beginning of my journey. When I came down those stairs, I met with Dwayne, I met Chris, and a few of my professors, and they were all just stunned at how well I was just, you know, taking it on. And I was stunned, you know. You were dealing with numbness, you're dealing with shock, not really knowing what to do or say. And so I got in the car, and I called my best friend who lived in Virginia, and I told him, and he said, girl, everything is going to be all right. Everything is going to be all right. And so I knew then, even after I got off the phone with him, I thought that it would make me feel better. And it didn't. And I said, well, this means this is an exclusive experience. This is something I'm going to have to deal with by myself. Even if I have people around, I still have to deal with this. And so, again, the journey went on. My first night was sleepless. Because actually we had had a death in the family, and the next day I had to do her makeup. I had to do my aunt's makeup. And so it was a nice distraction, but it's always that little cloud over your head. And I was blessed at the time. My father was living with me, and he confronted me. And I was so scared because I didn't want him to know right then because I didn't know how he was going to handle it. And so he asked me straight to my face. He said, what's going on? And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you have been really closed off lately, and I'm not, you know, that's not like you. He said, and then the other day you said you had to go to the doctor, and that's not like you. So what's going on? And I said, well, Daddy, what do you think it is? And he said, well, I think you may have HIV. And I said, well, you'd be right. And he just cried like a baby. And that was the moment that I realized how serious it would be for everyone else. At the time, I was all right with it, but I was not okay with everyone else not being okay with it. My biggest concern was more of how my friends were going to handle it, how my family would handle it, because if you have ever had a condition, the one thing that you don't want is pity. The last thing you want are those eyes. I don't know if you've ever been in contact with cancer patients who don't want people to know that they're sick, and the first thing they tell you is, I don't want people looking at me like that. And that was what I was dealing with, because I didn't want people feeling bad for me, because I felt like I was going to be all right. And then I jumped into treatment. And that is one of the things that I found most important, and one of the things that we as a community needed to promote more, because I didn't realize until I was positive that people waited after they found out. And it's not because they're stubborn or they don't care. It's too much for them. It's really a lot to take on, especially if you aren't educated about it, if you don't know anybody who has it, or if you've never had an experience with it. If you get a diagnosis of HIV and all you've ever done is heard about it, that can completely rock your world, and it can paralyze you. And to me, that paralysis is what is causing death, because we get in our minds that it's not even worth it. When we are told that it's a death sentence, and we're told it doesn't matter, people don't even try. And so that was really the first part of the story, because it really went in phases. Because the first 3 months I was fine. I didn't worry about it. I didn't cry about it. It was always, God is good and we're going to be just fine. Well, the emotion came. And the emotion came when I confronted my ex about it. It wasn't face-to-face. It was through a message that I was just informing him that this is what the situation was. What I do that for? Well, that was really when my heart began to break, because it became perfectly clear to me that he did not care and that it was of no concern to him. And what broke me down the most was that my living or dying did not faze him one bit. I told God, I said, well, even though we're dealing with that, I can deal with that. If you make it so that I don't have to be bothered with him, I don't have to see him, we're going to make it. Well, if anybody knows the Lord, you know that he don't always work like that. He did the absolute opposite. Everywhere I went, there he was. Everywhere I went. And I had gotten a job at the mall. When the mall first opened again, Opry Mills, I opened up the Steve Madden store. Well, when I walked down on my break, and who is working at another store down in the mall? And and my best friend was with me. My best friend, we were, he said, honey, you would not believe who I just saw. And I was like, surely not. Surely not. And I can remember us in the car, and I said, I just do not understand why God is making me deal with, why is he forcing me to go through this? Because I just felt like it was torture and torture and torture. And the Holy Spirit spoke to me just as clear that night and said, well, first of all, you are fearing him. And I didn't give you that spirit. And until you decide that you're not going to be afraid of him anymore, you're going to deal with it. And so I put on my big boy drawers and tried to, but it was really hard, because we would be walking through the mall sometimes and he would be right here. I could touch him. That's how close he would be. And he looked at me dead in my face, And so that, for me, was one of the hardest things to deal with, was how do you not react to this? Because I can't tell you the thoughts that I've had in my mind about reacting to him. And the only...
What were some of those thoughts that you had?
Murder.
Okay.
And I'll just tell you straight out. That was the first thing that I thought. And I'll tell you, I prayed for it. Because to me, he didn't care. And he was bouncing around. And I said, Lord, we don't have any use for him. We don't have any use for him. We don't have any use for him here. And so, and I've asked God to forgive me for that. But, at the end of the day, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to tell you the truth. And I had a lot of anger and a lot of bitterness, because there was not any resolution from him. I will say that I wanted him to come to me. And he didn't have to say, I'm sorry, but at least acknowledge it. But the question is, what do you do if that doesn't happen? What do you do when you know that this is not something that you are going to get an apology for, or that they are even sorry for? How do you deal with your reality that is strictly yours and that really no one can really walk you through? And so me and Barbara talked, and when me and Barbara met, I will never forget when Barbara asked me, she said, I need you to tell me, why are you not fighting angry? Why are you not ready to just lose it? And the only thing that I could tell her was God. At the end of the day, I had been through enough before this diagnosis to know that God is real and to know that He will keep you if you allow Him to. And that does not always feel well. When we talk about faith, a lot of times people think that faith is something that you feel or it's something that, comes upon you. Faith is a choice. And I decided that not only was I going to live, but I was not going to allow that person to have the benefit or the satisfaction of knowing that this took me to a place where I was not able to function as an individual or as a Christian, because at the end of the day, we are counted as sheep for the slaughter. And I took it as, well, Lord, you trusted me with this, so help me to get past my hurt and my pain so that I can help somebody else. Because I remember when it first happened, I found out he was dating somebody, and I called him. And I told him, and it wasn't to be ugly. It wasn't to spill any tea. It wasn't to, put him out. It was, I wanted that other person to know. I wanted them to have the chance that I didn't. And I tell people all the time, and it may be a little insensitive, everybody's not strong enough to handle something like that alone. Especially in this case, I pride myself in being a pretty strong person, in being able to walk through it, being able to hold my head high. Because even when I posted about me speaking today, a lot of people didn't know that I was positive, and so it has encouraged me even more that not only do I have it, but I am wearing it well. And that to me is also something that encourages me, because it helps people know not only can you live, but you can be happy. You can be comfortable, and you can have love, you can have relationships. And the thing that I tell people is that having a support system is really important. I have some really, 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 really close friends here today. Denitra, Amy, her mom, and my best friend, Philip. These three really held me down, especially these two. This one, she wore me out because I didn't tell her at first. But there was not a question. I didn't have to explain. I didn't have to go into anything deep. It was, are you okay? Well, we're going to be fine then, And so that's really the biggest, the most of the story, because I got into treatment really soon. I have met some of the most amazing people. Nashville Cares, I have met, and just not even there, but at the doctor's office, And that's another thing that a lot of people are afraid of, to go to the doctor. That's why a lot of people are afraid to go to the doctor. And that rested with me maybe a month into treatment, because when you go into that waiting room, you never know who's going to be in that waiting room. And the gay community here in Nashville is small. And so you see friends, you see people, and so that too can be something that is discouraging, because that lets people know what's going on. But I always go with a smile. If I see somebody I know, I go up to them and speak to them. How you doing? What's going on? And strike up a conversation, because I know when you see someone that you know, it's that, oh my Lord. I've seen people get up out of the lobby and leave. I've seen all kinds of things. And I think having situations like this, coming together and talking, it takes that fear, it takes that anxiety away, where you have people around that love you, and that they don't count it robbery to consider you a friend, regardless of your situation. I was talking to Miss Chapman yesterday, and she said, anybody can have this. She said, even me, including me. And I thought that was profound to me, because, me and Miss Chapman, she used to be my boss. So me and Miss Chapman got close a long time ago, and she was there around the time after my grandmother passed away. And so she has instilled in me a lot of, when we talk about resilience, she instilled in me that idea of perseverance and keeping still, because she would work us like a dog, honey, and tell us, keep going. Keep going. And so it's voices like hers, it's voices like Amy's and my best friends and Barbara's, and just people around that even on the worst day, even in the hardest times of life, you have to keep going, because it is so easy to get stuck. And then when you look back on it, you resent yourself, because it is, why couldn't I just have shaking myself up, you know. And so it has just been, for me, the reason why I'm glad I'm here, the reason why I want to continue to do things like this is because people need to hear it, you know, because there are people, I got an email today after I posted about it, and one of the girls said, you know, I've been living with this for a year and a half, and I didn't know that you had it. And now that I know that you have it, I feel more comfortable telling somebody. And I get a little, you know, because that is important to me. And that is what I try to tell people, that it doesn't take much. You don't have to wear it on your sleeve, but letting people know the truth. You never know what somebody's dealing with, and you never know what you mean to someone and how your life impacts other people. And knowing your struggles, how that inspires other people to say, well, if you can handle that, I can definitely handle this, you know. And so that is one of the things that I wanted to discuss as far as the resilience. And the people ask me, how did you do it? I decided I'm going to get up from here. I didn't want to die. If I was going to die, I wanted to die doing everything I could. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to be, you know, sad and downtrodden. And it wasn't, and I'm not the only one. You know, and this virus is nothing like it used to be. You know, just reading and looking at articles, people would find out and would die the next week. And so I count myself completely blessed that not only did I find out, but I found out on accident. You know, and I tell people that I make sure I tell people that this was not something that came up on me or I had the thought to go. It just happened. And I don't think that just happened just by chance, you know. I don't think I'm here by chance. And so, you know, I feel like I'm rambling, but, you know, there's so many things that I could talk about these last 4 years because it has definitely changed my life, but not negatively. And I wish I could say that because I know a lot of people think, you know, oh, this is just so horrible. And that's just what I expected once I was diagnosed. And I was so pleasantly surprised that it wasn't. I consider this a very smooth process that I experienced when it came to counseling, when it came to care. I love my doctors. Everything has been just fine. And I want people to know that is possible. That is possible. This doesn't have to be something that takes you down and keeps you down. This can be something liberating, not just for you, but for others. And for me, I'm not concerned about me. I'm concerned about other people who are not able to pull themselves up because it is difficult. Life is rough. And then when things get piled on top of you, it's almost like, you know, and my generation, we have a hard time working through things. And stuff like, and a diagnosis like this can be not only debilitating, but fully devastating to someone's life, and it can cause a spiral of, you know, a snowball effect of issues after issues after issues. And so one of the things that I just want to let everybody know is that if you plant your feet firm on the ground, the wind is going to blow, but we have to know that we won't break unless we allow ourselves to. Well, the little song is, it's really simple. I love this song. It's by James Cleveland. And it just says everything is going to be all right. Because, you know, I think of my grandparents. When things would get rough, when I would be just over it, she'd come and pat me on my leg or pat me on my shoulder. She or my grandmother would just say, it's all right, honey. Everything is going to be all right, you know. And so, everything will be all right. Everything will be all right. All right. After the storm cloud passes over, everything will be all right.